the projects you don't get while sitting in the office being frustrated that there is no work. The projects you get when you socialize, when you go outside, this is where you pick up jobs because you put yourself out, because architecture is very much related to the person doing it. We are representatives of our work in the way we act, in the way we dress, in the way we interact with other people.
Welcome to the Architect My Business podcast. I'm Aya Schlachter, your host, founder and CEO of MGS Global Group. We provide architectural drafting and rendering services for busy firm owners and designers. From starting out solo to now leading a team of over 45 and growing, I've learned a thing or two about making a business thrive. Whether you're thinking of starting, already managing, or want to take your business to the next level, this podcast is for you. Each episode is packed with simple, actionable tips on leadership, people, marketing processes, and of course, profit. I keep things real. Like you, I've got no time for fluff. This podcast is brought to you by MGS Global Group. Now, let's get into this episode. Hi everyone, today on the show we've got Marc Dufour-Feronce joining us. He's one of the founding partners of Rundzwei Architekten, a Berlin-based firm known for producing some truly amazing work. If you've seen their projects like the Corkscrew House or the Timber Hat, you'll know exactly what I mean. I've been following their work recently, and honestly, it's just really impressive. Their designs are super thoughtful, material-driven, sustainable, and just beautifully put together. So Marc's background is pretty amazing, and you can definitely see the kind of influence in how their studio approaches design. It's clear that everything they do is intentional, from how they use materials to how the buildings respond to their surroundings. Andreas Rig, Marc's co-founder, couldn't join us for this episode, but hopefully he'll be able to come soon. But in the meantime, I'm really excited to hear more from Marc about his journey, the business side of running a practice, and thinking behind their work. So Marc, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Aya, for having me. Just a little correction. I was not working at Herzog de Meuron. This was my partner. Andreas, he worked at Herzog de Meuron. I worked at Acme and Lab Architecture in Dubai, and so a little mix-up. I'm quite familiar with the work of Herzog de Meuron because Andreas brought a lot of influence from them to our office when we started the business and so on. So we started the office with a file setup copy of Herzog de Meuron's folder structure and so on. So there has been a lot of influence to our office in the very beginning from Herzog de Meuron.
Yeah. So I know you founded Rundzwei Architekten in 2012 in Berlin. What's the meaning of Rundzwei? Why Rundzwei?
Yeah, I get that asked quite often. It is a made-up name. It doesn't have a real meaning. It's quite complicated. In Germany, the easiest way of setting up a business is to found a GbR, which is a partnership of two people. You don't need to have a written contract and so on. And there you are obliged to carry your name in the name of the thing. And Dufour-Feronce, Reg, and so on, we found a little bit too difficult for people because it's a French name in Germany to handle with. And then we kind of said, okay, well, let's make up a name which kind of is made up of our last name. So it's R and D. And then I do have a twin brother who's an architect as well. So the initial idea was to have him as well. So we said D squared. And then someone later on told us and so on that this is the abbreviation for Rundzwei. And that's why we named it Rundzwei. But it doesn't really have a meaning. It's just a fun name.
I like it because it's very easy to understand and remember. It's number 2. So wait, you have a brother who's an architect also?
Yes, I have a twin brother who's an architect. He also works in Berlin for a large Austrian firm. And we studied together, Andreas and I, and my brother, we met, I knew my brother before, but with Andreas, we met in university. And we worked together throughout university. And then after we graduated and so on, our paths were deferred a little bit, but we always kept in touch because in university, we already had the idea to once have an office together, but the three of us. And then my brother, he was at the time working in London and was very happy with his office. And then Andreas and I, we decided to kind of open the office, just the two of us. And that was the start of Rundzwei Architects.
So you met in university even before Like, wait, 2008, right? You graduated 2008 or?
2006 we graduated. So we met in 2002. I think we started. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
4 years prior to our graduation.
So I'm curious, Mark. It's hard to work with friends and partners, right? I see a lot of conflict around that. How are you successful in terms of finding the right partner? Because I mean, it's really hard to find a partner that balance each other out. Like, what is the
Yeah.
your secret?
Well, I think for me, I don't think it's the same for everyone, but for me and Son, it was good to start the firm with a friend, because we have also been through some hardship. And then it's better to have a friend, and then you can also rely on the friendship as a thing which ties and glues the office together and so on, because there's a special way of understanding. But I think one thing which made the partnership between Andreas and me special is that we know each other for such a long time. We, as students, we did live together, so we know each other quite well. We share some hobbies outside architecture, so we both play volleyball as a hobby, and been in the same volleyball team and so on. So there is a long history which dates back lots of years. And therefore, I think when it gets tough at the office and so on, there is a special understanding between the two of us. And then we do speak the same architectural language. I think that helps us too. So whenever all the projects at our office, we split between the two of us. And if there's a project he takes care of and so on, I can very well trust in the project being at the end a nice design and the outcome, and it's well kept. The client will be happy, and these kind of things, I think, make the relationship between the two of us very special, because I can 100% rely on him, and then there's also the common friendship and also the group of friends we have and so on. There's quite a large overlap of friends and so on, so that kind of helps also getting along outside the office with friends and family.
That's great. So, are you both? How is your studio set up? Are you both designers? Because normally, other partnerships, one is more the design and creative, the other one does more operations, billing, or business development. How does that
Yeah.
work?
In terms of that, and I think we both come from a very deep love of designing and so on. So no one of the two of us wants to let go on designing. So there's two designers and there's two businessmen. And I think it's a good thing. I always envy people who started their offices on their own, because I think that's the strongest challenge there is. Because through all the tough stuff and so on, you have to go on your own. And our office also has been through, as I already said, difficult times and so on. And it's always better to have someone who is in the same boat, trying to steer it in the correct direction. Um, and therefore, I always feel grateful that I have a partner at the office, and I don't have to kind of take all the difficult decision on my own. And so, and therefore, I would recommend everyone or anyone who wants to start an office and so on to look for the right partner and not go on their own, because I think it makes it a lot easier. And so on. But as you said, and so on, you have to carefully pick your partner, because I think that is probably the biggest challenge. And university, I think, is a good pool of picking partners, because you have been through things, and you kind of experience how it is working together, how it is, what kind of skills the other person brings to an office, and you might also know what you're good in, and so on. With some of the things, Andreas is better than I am, and so on, and then we kind of support each other, and so on. And I think that makes it very, important to have someone you can rely on.
That's great. And if you hear a lot of horror stories about people partnering up with friends, and some people always say don't work with friends because you might ruin the relationship. But my former boss, I used to work in New York City as an architect. They're also for like 18 years ago, they're still very strong and solid team. And I think they found the right partner. You mentioned, Mark, that you went through a little bit of a struggle? I mean, was it during the pandemic, or were there any economic downturns in Berlin that caused this struggle? And how did you survive all these things, like
Yeah,
financially and all the things? Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, there was a lot of struggles. There's good times, but there's also bad times, and so on. That is part of running an office. Um, I think one of the first sort of not so nice experience we made was after starting the office. We worked on the first project, dived super deep in, were super involved, and so on, but kind of were not experienced in running a business, so we lacked a little bit um, the knowledge that while you are very busy, you already have to look for the next project to come. And so after doing the first project, which was a project where the client came from the family side of Andreas and so on, we experienced that the project was finished, and then we stood there without any work and so on, and we had bills to pay and so on. So I give the recommendation to people who want to start and so on, not to get too lost in design, but also kind of have an open eye for what is the next project and how you go in acquiring it and so on, which is not so easy. And as an architect, or in architecture especially, takes a long time because you have to convince other people that you're the right person for the job. Um, and if it's the beginning of your office, you don't have a large portfolio of projects to show and so on, it gets easier while the office is run for a longer time. But in the very beginning, and so there's maybe only the projects you did working for other architects, but not for yourself. And so this was the first one, which was tough because we kind of had to look for new stuff and convince people, and didn't have very much money saved up and so on. So we kind of had to push money into the office and survive for a long time with very little outcome money wise from the office. And then the second largest uh, crisis we hit was the pandemic, because I mean, I think this was the same for everyone because no one was really prepared. We had to change our office from an office where everyone would come in every day into an office which was able to also work remotely. Luckily, well, I don't know if luckily is the right word, but people at our office, they like the office, they like the atmosphere, so they also like coming in. We share our space with other firms who are not architects, and they struggle a lot more getting their people back to the office. Our colleagues, and so they are in home office once in a while, but not every day, and because they also kind of like to interact with colleagues and like the atmosphere, and we do also do some social events and these kind of things, because our office is focused on sustainable architecture, but we also try to be sustainable with the human resources we have at the office to like develop long careers and bind the people to our office so that people can involve and also grow knowledge, and also as in terms of responsibility with the office. So we try to do a flat hierarchy and these kind of things. That was the second one. And then the third crisis and so on we had in Germany after the financial the COVID crisis and so on, the prices for building materials, I think it was the same in the US and everywhere, went up while the European Central Bank also increased the interest rates. And we worked for a lot of private clients, and at the time at larger projects, which were all based on a sustainable approach to architecture, but on the other hand, and so also were an investment, so people wanted to get profit out of the project, and for them, and so the math at the end didn't sum up so that there was a profit, so they decided to stop the big projects, and we relied on it. We had people at the office who wanted to get a monthly salary, and that's if you're an architect, adds up quite quickly. So we had to pull, unfortunately, the strings and let people go who have been with us for a very long time, and we liked and we felt like family to them. And that was really emotionally also a very tough experience of having to shrink the office to a very small number. We increased it now. The future looks bright at the moment, so hopefully it's going to stay like this. um, But architects, I think personally, they're quite reliable on the overall economical situation, and that makes it difficult because most of our colleagues and so on, from my experience and so on, they are um, and I think that's why the podcast is an interesting, um, you're running is an interesting medium, because a lot of colleagues and so on, they are so focused on the design and so on that they are not running their businesses so that they are saving up money and so on. And we had to make the same experience in our careers as well.
I know because I talk to a lot of architects, and one of the things that successful architects tell me is you're running a business, not a hobby, right?
Exactly.
So we
Yeah. Yeah.
think about that because
Yeah.
we weren't. I don't know in Germany, but in the U.S. we're not taught about how to run a business. I mean, we don't have any business skills or finance, and I think that's really important. What is it like in the at university in Deutschland?
Well, there's different approaches according to the university all over Germany. I have studied at the Technical University of Berlin, and even within the Technical University of Berlin, you were able to kind of pick your path and go either into the more creative direction or learn the more technical things. But business was never taught there and so on because they said that's probably what young architects will pick up while they then starting their career inside an office and so on. But to be honest, it is something where most offices are not so transparent. You will, if you're a project manager and so on, you're told the hours you can spend on um, the project, or if the project is run feasible or not, and so on. These kind of information are often shared, but the actual hard facts, the money behind it, the offers, the whatever calculations of cost versus income and so on, they're not shared. And at our office, we try to be a bit more open. So if people are interested in some, we can tell them about the um, hard facts as well, because we think that if they understand that an office or how the office is run and so on, then they might understand that if the project brings in a large amount of money and so on, that large amount of money is actually not going straight into the director's pockets and so on. It's spent on materials we use, software, computers, human resources and so on. And then at the end and so on, it's a very thin line between profit and no profit on a project and so on. And every time while I was working as an architect for someone on a salary, not my own office and so on, I always question inside the project and so on, why didn't we do another iteration? Why didn't we push more for risky design and these kind of things? Once I had my own office, I kind of understood that you cannot, I don't know, deal with a client who is uncertain and is overwhelmed by the amount of iterations, and is also then getting scared or whatever. And so that sometimes the client needs a clear pick, a clear direction of what is the best, what he should choose, and so on. And that sometimes going too crazy and so on is overwhelming for the client and so on. And these kind of things is I think should, as an architect who's like super passionate about design and so on, sometimes are a little bit um, something which might frustrate you in the early days and so on. And then you get a better understanding of what client is the best for a risky design and so on. So what we do at the office is we try to pick projects where we kind of say we are daring, we are trying to push boundaries, and then there's some projects which are a bit more like the money cows, projects where we are a bit more reserved and kind of try to kind of get at least the most out of it, but not to be too pushy for too extravagant designs and stuff which might be too scary for a client to kind of take and pay for it at the end.
So you mentioned earlier that when you started, you had one project. So how did you get to now being able to select your clients? right now it seems like you have a diverse portfolio, big projects,
Yeah.
multifamily, residential. How did you get from just one project to now, like you're well established and you kind pick who to work with, and it seems like your design aesthetic is very clear, right? You probably want to work with clients that share your same design aesthetic. Here in the US and in most of the new architects, the clients tell them what to do, right? And we'll just show them designs and this is what I want. But how did you get what was the process like from now having a huge pipeline of work?
Yeah. Well, slowly, I think sums it up quite well. Um, this is what you want when you start your office. You want to pick the cool jobs and work on those cool jobs and so on. But like I said, after finishing the first project and so on, we had to do a couple of projects which paid bills, which are not on our webpage, which kind of made us survive. And I think someone, when we started the office, one of the first things we did is get someone to design our webpage and program it and so on. And those guys who are sharing office space with us and so on, they said to us, um, well, you need to have a clear focus on what is your key thing you offer to clients and so on. And when you are a young office and so on, it's very difficult to pick one because you want to stay open-minded to everything because you feel like you might block or close a door on an opportunity. But then we realized and so on, okay, no, that's actually what we have to do. And I think this is what brings us now clients because we have established ourselves as an office which has a very strong design focus and tries to very hard connect it with sustainable architecture. So we build with bio-based materials, cork, straw bales, clay, timber, all these kind of things and so on, and try to kind of ban carbon emission from, or as at most as we can, from our project. And this now brings a certain type of client to us who wants high-end design combined with sustainable, healthy living. We build with the principle of simple build. I don't know if it's something which is familiar in the US. It's the idea of kind of reducing, building low-tech buildings, reducing it to the bare minimum, and not building multiple layers so that at the end and so on, it's cheaper to construct, but also if it has an afterlife and so on, it's easier to disassemble. It's then easier to, because they're not glued, they're mechanical fixed, the layers. It's very little layers, so it's easier to understand in a couple of years' time. A builder can take it apart and doesn't have to kind of go through our drawings in order to understand what all the layers means. And this kind of mindset and so on brings, as I said, a certain type of people to us who are wanting that kind of building for them or for their tenants, if it's a larger multi-story building. But then we also experience that sometimes and so on, you get clients by luck. For the Corkscrew House, for example, I took a train ride here in Germany from Frankfurt for another project back and to our office, and the German train operator at the time struggled a lot with operating the train, so the train was incredibly busy, and I lost my seat reservation and then were forced to kind of talk to people and ask them whether I can sit next to them. And there was a lady who had booked 2 seats and I asked her to give up 1 seat. And then I felt obliged to kind of start a conversation. And then it came to the result that she needed an architect for a plot in Berlin. And I said, well, this is what we do. And I showed her the work I was just presenting in Frankfurt to the authorities there. And then she was kind of impressed by the way we work, that we try to push boundaries, that we don't do just, I don't know, one design and say, that's it, take it or take it not. And then said, okay, well, I'm interested in working with you. And I said, yeah, here's my business card. And I thought that she probably never called. And then eventually she did call, and we had the first meeting in order to discuss the design. And she said, words architect laugh. She said, like, well, I want to free up your creativity, so I'm not going to give you much information of what I want, and so on, just start. And then we got super excited and started like kind of exploring on what to do and so on. And our office always works with options. So we presented 2 or 3 options to her. One option was going to the absolute maximum and was trying to kind of push boundaries and so on. But we also had a couple of options because we, at the time and so on, we couldn't really picture if she is daring or not and so on. And then she always went for our most favorite option and kind of managed then at the end to build the corkscrew house with her, which at the times we designed and so on was one of the first buildings in Northern Europe to kind of put cork as a visible insulation and also visible layer on the facade and also on the roofs and so on. And since now and so on is quite successful and has kind of become a role model for a role project for other cork buildings and is incredible material. So we've, in terms of that and so on, there was no connection to her. We didn't know her before and so on. It was just a meeting by chance.
Can I share? I'm from the Philippines and I've been away from the Philippines for 30 years. And I got invited to a high school reunion. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to my high school reunion because 30 years in high school, I was kind of awkward in high school. But they asked me to speak because I'm an architect, and they said do it for the. It's an all girls school. They said do it for the girls to empower them and to do
Yeah.
architecture. So I did, and so I sat next to my classmate from I haven't seen in a while, and she asked me, "Do you do any work in the Philippines?" And I said, "It depends what type of work." I didn't say no. Later that day, she introduced me to her husband, and I landed my biggest job ever in
Yeah.
one day just because I went to the high school reunion.
Yeah.
It's called Chinatown Eastgate Mall. It's huge. It's like a mall with a building on top. And the idea behind it is a hutong of Beijing. So it's kind of like a really cool concept because they're Chinese. So they wanted a mini Chinatown mall, but more authentic. So we did that. And I inputted this design to the Cleveland AIA, American Institute of Architects, as a competition. And our company won just because I went
Oh,
to my
cool.
high school reunion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Congratulations on that.
But I don't like to go to those things like that. That's important. Like I keep on telling my friends who are architects, go to the church event, go to the bowling event, go to the dog park. You never know when you meet your
Exactly.
next client.
Yeah, I think this is a very important point for young architects and so on. Is the projects you don't get while sitting in the office, being frustrated that there is no work. The projects you get when you socialize, when you go outside, when you do your sports, when you go to college reunions or high school reunions and so on. This is where you pick up jobs because you put yourself out. You say like, look, I think this is because architecture is very much related to the person doing it. And so is we are representatives of our work in the way we act, in the way we dress, in the way we interact with other people and so on. And because architecture is not a silent skill you do in a cupboard or in a dark room and so on, it's something where you are a communicator, where you are presenter of the work, where you have to convince people, where you have to kind of moderate builders working together of different backgrounds and these kind of things and so on. And that's also why it is very much related to the person working as an architect. And that's why I think uh, being an architect, having a webpage and so on doesn't do the job entirely. And so it's you have to put yourself out and interact with people, meet people, and be very social to gain jobs. And so that's definitely the case.
So you mentioned earlier that you had to let people go during COVID, and now did you rehire some of the people that you had to let go, and how big
We
is your office now?
we try to we try to hire them back, but the thing is that when we told them and so on, sorry, you will have to leave and lay them off and so on, we also told them, look, we are well connected in the Berlin architecture scene. We will try to help you find another job. So we recommended them to colleagues and so on. And obviously, we didn't recommend them to colleagues where it's terrible. We recommended them to colleagues where we like the work where we know that the office atmosphere is nice, and some, unfortunately they do like it there, so they were not willing to come back. Which I think, as an architect, a young architect in your career, it's also good to kind of get different experiences from different offices, because um, uh, things are done in different ways, and it's different type of clients, different sizes of project, but also different yeah way of running the offices, and it's good to get a broad overview and see how it's been done there and how it's been done at other practices and so on. So I think for them it's also important to kind of not stay with us for ever. And so I do like if people stay forever, and we have, as I said, support them to stay forever. But on the other hand, then I also understand when people leave us to kind of get different experiences, go abroad, learn how architecture has been done in other countries and so on. Because I mean, I did the same. I worked in Dubai and in London, and now I'm back in Germany, and I'm still drawing from the experience I had working abroad.
You mentioned that you worked internationally for bigger firms, Dubai, London, and in Germany. So did you you worked with bigger companies, right? Did you learn from the bigger companies and how to operate your firm? What are the takeaways from that?
Yeah, well, when I worked in Dubai for a larger firm, but I worked for the Dubai branch, which was just 4 people. So there was the background of a large firm and the setup of a large firm, but the actual office was only, as I said, 4 people, which was interesting because also of the time difference. The main office was in Melbourne, in Australian company, and we did project in the Middle East, which were running on a very fast pace. The project had to be finished yesterday, and we were able to kind of cope with that fast pace by working on them for 8 hours, then saving, and then going to sleep. And then the people in Australia picked up and continued working on it, on some of the project, not at all of them. And this was kind of interesting because it was very fast evolving. But unfortunately, we never managed to build anything during that time because this was before the financial crisis in 2009. And at the time, in some project were investments just by having a bigger design on it, and then were sold to the next client, and then the next client bought the plot plus the architect, and then had him redo or do a different type of building and so on. Which was as a young architect, just having graduated from university and so on, was very interesting because it was super fast and a lot of outcome. But for me, it always lacked a bit of realism and also the sustainable and kind of sensitive approach on it. And then I was forced to kind of leave the Dubai scene because the financial crisis hit. Went back to Germany for a little bit, tried to find a job here, but it was very hard in Berlin. And then I went to London to work for a company which just started a couple of years ago, so was like mid-size office, and so I was helping to kind of build up the office. Is quite big now. It's called Acme Space, and they have multiple offices in Madrid and in Australia now, and so on, and in Berlin as well, and it's fairly large. But I joined them when it was still a mid-size office, which was interesting because I could kind of also get involved in establishing the office and so on. And I think from that office, I probably drew the most in terms of structuring and how to deal with the client, because the Friedrich Ludwig, who is the director of ACME, he is German, and he is a very interesting person to learn with, and so on, and he influenced me as well quite a lot. And Andreas, he worked also at ACME Space, but we were working at different times. So when he left and joined Herzog Dimmerons, and I joined ACME, so but we knew the same people and so on, and the same way of working. So that is something we took in the very beginnings and so on, and the way of thinking of like trying to root the design in its local context and these kind of things we definitely took from working at other firms and so on.
If you're running a growing architecture firm, you're probably not short on projects, you're short on people. Talent shortage is real. Finding and retaining skilled professionals takes time. Meanwhile, deadlines keep getting closer. And when you're balancing growth with quality, it gets harder to maintain your project standards as the work piles up. We are here to bridge the gap. We provide qualified architecture staff on demand so you can scale your delivery without compromising quality. That's what MGS Global Group does. Whether you're overwhelmed with construction documentation, need BIM support, or your internal systems just aren't built for this level of growth, our team plugs in seamlessly. Think of us as an extension of your in-house team without the long hiring process. And because we work across time zones, your projects keep moving even after your office closes for the day. If your timelines are starting to feel stretched and your team's at capacity, visit mgsglobalgroup.com. We can get started in 24 hours. We're here to help you scale smarter and deliver faster with quality, consistency, and peace of mind. So I want to talk a little bit about your R&D process because I have a lot of questions about the cork house and I love the floor plan and all, but let's talk about the studio emphasizes research and design as twin pillars of sustainable context-aware architecture, integrating space, materiality, local history, and environmental responsiveness. So my question is, what is your R&D process? And I know that you really deeply research materials and the environment. How does that work in terms of project billing and time? Because
Yeah,
I'm assuming that it also takes quite a bit of time in term for
yeah,
research.
it does. It does, unfortunately. Um, in Germany, the fees of an architect, they are staged or divided in different stages, starting from stage 1 to stage 9. And the first stages from 1 to 3 or 4 and so on are considered as the design stages. That's where you develop the concept and these kind of things and so on. And there's a certain percentage of the money you spend on constructing it, which you can charge as an architect for these stages and so on. And unfortunately, the first stages are not so high on percentage. So designing too much and making too many iterations and options and so on is not paid very well. And this is one of the main issues. So the system kind of is based on going quite straightforward from first design to the finished build. So what our office struggles is that we have to kind of make a good design and an interesting approach on the project and so on within very little money. That's something where we always struggle. But as we said and so on, this is what sets us apart from other architects and so on. We're willing to kind of accept the fact that these phases are not so well paid and that we might not be even at the end. So what we tell our clients, and it's actually what we do, is we start with a white blank page. For every project, we don't kind of have a set architectural language we kind of repeat on the projects. We kind of custom tailor the design to the task and to the client. We have a lot of clients who actually get us to design a personal building, a building for them. So we kind of talk to them and try to understand what the client actually wants and so on. And we do that in workshop meetings we have together with the client. For example, for the Timberhead building, we met the CEO of the project, and she said she wants an office building and a production hall or workshop hall, basically. She told us that it's supposed to look like this. And then we said, hold on, we want to do the same process like designing a single family building. We want to do the same process on this larger industrial building. So we said, what we're going to do is we're going to do it not top to bottom. We want to do it bottom to top. So we said, what I want a couple of workshop meetings with all the employees. So I said, I'm going to sit with them and discuss, because I have understood that you have a current building and the current building is not suitable to your needs anymore. So let's rethink the needs, and let's also rethink some of the processes you have been doing over the past years. Um, and let's think if they are necessary and if they can be done better in a better building. So I said, let's start with a blank page. I sent me a list of all the materials and I don't know, machines and things you have. It was a large Excel sheet, and we did cut them all in styrofoam. So I went with a big um, case of or box of styrofoam boxes, and sat with them and had a basic setup of what I understood the building should be, and then run through every of the rooms with the people actually working in the rooms and said like, show me where you put the machines, show me where you store materials, and if that's the right place, how would you do it, and so on. And that shaped the building. So the building was developed from the inside out. And then after I had the first sketches of how the building, the floor plan should look like and so on, I went back to the CEO and showed her and said, like, this is what your colleagues think the building should look like. And then she said, okay, that's fine with me if that makes our operation better. And we came up with new rooms, we came up with new functions. There was actually developed a new, because the previous, they had a lot of deliveries coming in, and the deliveries, spare parts and these kind of things. And the spare parts were placed wherever there was space on the property. And so, and I said that, and then someone had to go and look for them. Um, and uh, would run around the whole thing for a couple of hours trying to find a box of spare parts for one of the machines they needed to fix. So I said, this doesn't sound like very efficient to me. So I said, let's introduce a space which is the pick-up delivery point for delivery trucks. They place it in there, it goes in a shelf, it's stored in exactly the right position, it's digitally marked where it is, and then the person gets an email who needs that spare part and can go there and pick it up from the very spot it is. And she said, okay, I don't have a person who will then be the first person of encounter to the delivery people, but I will hire one. So we created that job and the space for that and so on. And she was very open-minded on all these kind of changes and said, like, if it makes us profit in one way or another, and so on, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to try it, and so on. So there was a couple of things we, as an architect from the outside, restructuring the whole firm and so on, brought in, and when I talk to them now and so on, they give us a feedback of that it runs quite well and that they love the building and it's so much more fun and enjoyable, and that they actually, because in Germany there is a big struggle on getting employees who are qualified and so on, because it's a big competition going on finding young qualified employees and so on. And she said that now, because the building is outstanding and is bright in an area and has lots of timber surfaces and so on, the people are applying just because they want to work in this building, and they also, I mean, on the other hand, they also want to work for the company, but they also enjoy working in this environment and so on. And she said that puts them or sets them apart from a lot of her competitors. And I think this is the kind of way we like to work with people, is to say, like, look, we don't know what it is when we first met or meet. We want to develop a building altogether, you and us. We're the architects. We try to draw lines based on what you tell us, but we also have an opinion because we have done it before, and we kind of develop the building while we go along. And then for the corkscrew house, for example, we didn't know it's going to be clad in cork in the very beginning. We had a co-worker at the office who came from Portugal, and our client told us that because the building was at the time still located in the areas where planes to Tega Airport would start and departure and arrive. So she said, well, I need a surface of the building which is sound insulating, which helps me to kind of get away from the noise. And I would like to have a solid monolithic approach or appeal of the building. So if you have a material which can be clad the building and also on the roof, I would appreciate. And then we started kind of researching this research and design. We looked into local materials, we looked into sustainable materials, we looked into this what is truly the embodiment of the material required and so on. And then the colleague from Portugal, she suggested, and so on, how about cork? And then we said, well, we have never heard about cork as a cladding material. And then we started going to Portugal, look into how it's manufactured. We were invited to a big conference on cork by the Portuguese manufacturer, and then came back super amazed about the opportunities this material brings by natural materials, which is sound insulating, is an insulation material as well, can be um, exposed to the weather conditions here in Germany without any, I don't know, paint or vanish or anything and so on. And it's mechanical fixed directly on the facade, and it's just left like this and has no chemicals in it. Is produced only by applying pressure and heat to it, and is a very thoughtful process. No tree is harmed, no tree is cut. And we said, okay, we want to convince our client this is the right material. The only downturn on cork is that it doesn't grow in Berlin. It grows in Portugal, so you have to put it on a lorry and carry it all the way to Berlin. That adds a bit of carbon dioxide, but we were willing to accept that fact because we were so convinced that the material is the right choice for us. And the client loved it. She said, "Okay, let's do it. I'm super excited about it," and so on. So you have to have the right type of client as well. Architecture is only as good as its clients, I think, as you might know.
I think you have good clients. They're both women.
A lot of them are women, yeah. Somehow,
the CEO and the other lady, right?
yeah.
I think are they more open?
They probably are. They're more daring, I think. And well, I think because we also work a lot on residential projects and so on. And then sometimes, if it's a family, then the women are the ones who are mostly, I don't know, concerned about the design and how it looks and so on. So we most of the times we deal with the ladies. But I think. Yeah, we do have good clients. I think that's key to success, I think, in architecture. And and you have to have open-minded clients who are willing to also kind of take a risk and push boundaries and go for stuff which is not the standard chemical-based materials on the market who are cheap to acquire. Our buildings are not the cheapest, I have to admit, but they are long-lasting and special buildings who are outstanding and also generate attention. And if you have a family living in it, so what we hear back from them is that they're also a very healthy building to live in because you can breathe free. You don't have any I don't know. Adhesives we try to avoid and so on. So there is no vapor of materials who might harm you, your children who are most of the times very sensitive towards these things. So that kind of thing is what we are aware in designing and so on, that we try to build healthy buildings who last long and make families and people who use it afterwards happy.
So you said you have really good clients. Have you ever fired a client?
We had, yeah. I think
Really?
that, I mean, yeah. Sometimes clients come. Well, we did fire a client based on the fact that he. Uh, this time it was a male client. That he was someone who was very, yeah, that he didn't really want to be part of the design process that much, but would always ask for things to be added, and then didn't accept the fact that if you have a lot of features, it obviously costs a lot of money. So we had to tell them, look, if we make it very crazy and have all these kind of things, and so on, obviously it will cost more. And at the end, and so on, he understood architecture or good architecture as a way of saving money. And we said, to a certain point, yes, but not to the point that if you add more things, that it will become cheaper. It will become more expensive than the previous design we showed to him and so on. And so we had to kind of um, find or then let go of the client and decided to not continue it because we thought that he doesn't really understand the principle of construction, that things cost money and it's not in the hand of an architect. You have to find at the end a builder who builds for the money we estimated, right? And we're not magicians. With architects like to try to do everything at once, but magic, I think, is something which is off the limits for an architect to a certain point.
Yeah. I mean, I've also had to do that because I'm trying to protect my team. I had to kind of
Exactly.
fire a client because, if they don't they have relationships with some of our staff. And, for me, I'm trying to protect my team and the company, from like very difficult, high maintenance clients. So it's always the hard part about the business, right? So
Yeah.
I'm looking at,
It,
yeah.
So, sorry if I just quickly add one thing. It's not just the own staff, but I also think that we sometimes need to protect the builders, the manufacturers, and the craftsmen from the client, because I think the thing is that the client always expects them to do a perfect job. So I think if you are expect the builder to do a perfect job and so on, I think you are obliged to also pay him on time and paying exactly the right amount of money you've agreed on. And the thing is that we sometimes we work with the client just once, but with the builders we also establish a relationship. Some of the builders we have been working with from the very beginning and so on. And I think it's a, a, a dual process of trust and also appreciation, right? The client has to appreciate the craftsmanship that goes into building the building, but also the manufacturer obviously has to understand, or the craftsman has to understand that the client has, because he builds for himself and so on, he has a very high expectation and these kind of things, and both need to be respectful to each other and so on. So that's also sometimes where we need to step in and tell one person or the other and so on, look, you have to understand that this is something you do in order to show your appreciation. Is pay on time, pay exactly the right amount of money. Don't screw the person over at the end and these kind of things and so on, because you want to work with them again, the client and also the builders.
That's great. So it really says so much about how you run your firm and your practice and the success that comes with the decisions that you make. I see that your work spans with residential, urban planning, interiors, and product design.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about all the diverse types of product? Like how do you go from residential to urban planning and then product design? Like what other what products? Yeah.
What interests us the most is the different scale of things. Product, constructing a building or designing a building is a process. If it's a medium-sized building and so on, of 2 or 3 years until from the first line you draw until the handing over of the keys to the client. And that's a very long process. Can be quite frustrating because things are developing really slowly sometimes. And with the smaller projects and so on, they're much faster. Like if you design a product and so on, you only need like a couple of months until you have the finished product in your hands. And that makes it for us very interesting to kind of jump between scales. Urban design takes even longer than building because, I mean, obviously first design the urban design and then go into designing the buildings and so on. So we try to then make learnings from each of the scales and then transfer that back to the smaller scales and what we learn in the smaller scales to the bigger scales. Um, I talked about the example of doing the things we do on a residential building with a client who designs a single family house, saying like we do workshops and we start from blank pages and see how it evolves and so on. And we have done the same, as I said, for the Timberhead building, even though it was a much larger building and so on. And for the client and so on, in the beginning, it was quite new because they said, well, we already know what we want and so on. But at the end and so on, they understood why we have done the process because outcome is much richer than it would be if we would have just started designing what they told us to design. And these transfers of principles we learn from other projects and so on is what enriches, I think, working on different scales and working in these different areas.
So you mentioned also that you engage in international competitions. Do you join competitions, or you serve as jurors or lecturers?
Both. Both. As a student, I worked for a large company here in Germany who manages architectural competition. It's called Phase 1 or Phase 1, translated to English. So they are in Germany, and they have also done quite big international competitions in Abu Dhabi, in the Ukraine, and everywhere. I and Andreas and my brother, we started working there as students because it kind of got us a lot of designs, big designs from big firms all over the world and so on, to see, to understand, to analyze. Because what we did is we kind of redraw their CAD drawings and calculated areas and made diagrams of how they're organized and so on. And then all these materials we created and so on were collected in a book, which was then given to the jury, and is an aid for the jury to process 50, 20, 300 designs in a very short, limited amount of time prior to the jury meeting, so that they can base a quality decision on which one is the winner of this competition and so on. And it's called an examination report. And this examination report is produced by Father Heinz, and we were, as students, helping them in their office, kind of redrawing these things. And that's how I first started, or we first started getting involved in these competition procedures. And then once I started working as an architect and had my own firm and so on, I now changed the world. So I'm not drawing drawings there anymore. I'm now the person who is the examiner. So I'm presenting, because the juries are held anonymously, so that you cannot have the author of the project present the project, because the jury is not supposed to know who is behind that work, because they should pick the best project and not the architect they like working with because it has a big name or whatever. So I have to kind of also look at the work, read all the texts they provided and the charts they provided with numbers and so on. And then I'm quite breaking that down to a little bit of bullet points they call findings. So things we found in the project, and that I'm standing in front of the jury before the jury starts discussing the project, and I present the projects of other architects in front of the jury without giving a criticism, just the basic facts of the thing. So that's what I'm still involved in, and it's quite interesting because it's very big projects, and you also get to learn a lot on the work other architects are doing for these very large projects and so on. That's what we do, but it's an external work. Andreas and I are then sometimes also part of juries, but smaller juries. Also with Father Heinz sometimes. And then we, as an office, also participate on competition, because we think that a competition is also a very good way of kind of trying to get into different fields of architecture. So we've just lately won a competition for a school extension and master plan project. We have never done a school project prior to that, and so on. We were able to get into the competition, and then we won it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. And now we are kind of working with a client on kind of getting step by step the master plan to be realized. And that's a very interesting challenge, because it's something where we can take the background we have from residential and industrial buildings and now apply it to school buildings. There's a lot of heritage protected buildings, so we do have also quite a large amount of experience on working on conversions or extensions of heritage protected buildings, because that's in Berlin also a major work area for architects. And then we do competitions in all of Germany, also abroad and so on. And it's also a fun task because the competitions are very quick design interventions, no contact to the client. So you're the client and the architect yourself. People at our office also enjoy that. It is time
So
consuming.
yeah,
There's,
I was going to ask you that, Mark, like
oh, sorry,
from a
sorry. Yeah.
financial perspective, right? Is that part of your marketing expense? Like you have 10% to spend on like like marketing, like you call it it's like a marketing um
Yeah, we do have a software. It's called Projo. It's a German-based software which helps us to look at the financial side of projects and so on. And when we look at the competitions in the software and so on, it's not something which makes us happy. You waste or you burn a lot of money. Um, we
I'm curious, how many projects have you won versus lost, like in terms of competition?
Yeah, we have way more lost on the lost side than on the winning side. And if we have won a project, then the project has never really happened from winning. Most of the project then have stopped because the client at the end didn't have the money or wasn't really willing to kind of go beyond the competition and so on. The competition side of our office is not the most successful story. There's other offices who are doing these kind of things way more successful than we do. We only do competition where we think that the task is interesting or that it helps us developing a new skill or where they want something super sustainable or these kind of things where it's setting or it's helping us to kind of also develop our work further and not just pure money project and so on. Yeah, but to be honest and so on, it's always something which is not very feasible at the end. And so, I heard stories of other architects who finance themselves from running competitions. I think this is something when you do architectural work which is a bit more daring and experimental and so on, is very hard to do because you don't win so many competitions if you are pushing for a little more out of the box design. If you are doing box standard, then you're probably more likely to win more competitions than if you are
So the
kind.
school that you won, when is it? Is it built already?
No, we just won it in the beginning of the year. So we have now helped the client to um, transform the master plan. It goes into there's a master in Germany for most of the areas. There's something called the bounds plan, which is sort of the legal framework for a master plan. And in order to extend the school, the legal framework master plan has to be changed. So we prepared all the documents required for changing the master plan, and that's now in the process of getting changed, which is a very slow over-regulated process and so on. And we have now put in a fee proposal of doing a feasibility study for one of the first projects in the master plan. And I think this is a project which will run for quite a long time and so on, step by step. It's not something
So
which will be finished within the next 5 or 6 years, I think.
so I think it's a win because once you get into the uh, you know, schools and all the things, then you'll have another pipeline. You've really
Exactly.
diversified, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
let's
we
talk
managed.
about staffing. Yeah.
But sorry, we managed to get into another competition because we have this as a reference, the winning project of another school. So we now work on a larger educational campus competition to the fact that we have won that. And so winning a competition is always a good thing because it opens up opportunities here and there.
That's one thing a lot of the US firms don't really do. The firms that do competition are the bigger firms with deeper pockets, right? They
Yeah.
have more, disposable income. Let's talk about the staffing situation and hiring in Berlin. Is it easy to find staff? Like how does that work? Like when you have a pipeline, when you win a big project, how do you staff those projects?
We do get a lot of applications, even though we are not currently looking at hiring new staff and so on. We have meetings with people and so on to kind of always be on the side that if we are required staff, then we can quickly act and get someone interesting that we don't have to start the whole process just then. Which helps to be a bit more active
Pro-
and
yeah, proactive. Yeah.
agile. Yeah. But because our projects got broadly published and so on, that helps getting a lot of applications. We also do lectures in universities and try to kind of get our stuff published in magazines and these kind of things on web pages, Arc Daily and such. That helps sending the message out that we are an office in Berlin and that we can offer interesting work and so on. And that brings us applications. So winning a competition is not only an investment in a future client, but also is something which creates publicity and gets published and so on. And then students find it, young architects find it and so on. And then they think, oh, I'm keeping that in the head of top of my head. And once they are then graduating, for example, then they put us on the list of applications and these kind of things. So being active and so on helps bringing people. We don't do um, working with recruiters or these kind of things because we try to kind of pick the people ourselves. And but it's an active process and it's quite time consuming because you have to run job interviews even though you're not currently looking at this one.
That's one thing that you're the out of all of the guests I've interviewed, Mark, you're the only one who has mentioned that you always have a consistent pipeline of employees. Other people scramble and other people like when they get a project, then that's the time they hire. But it seems like you have a really good grasp at running a business.
We've been lucky with that. I think, but I have to be honest. I think one of the reasons why it's for us not so difficult to find people is that our office is based in Berlin, which is quite popular for young people because it does offer quite a nice lifestyle and is well known for its party and creative scene and so on. And we are creative industry architects, so it draws people from everywhere and so on to kind of get the vibe and so on. And in the very beginning, I was not sure if people come to work for us or to live in Berlin. I think a bit of both. I guess. Um, I think it's way harder if you have your office in a place which is not as attractive, and the only thing you can attract with is the work you're offering and so on. I think a lot of people who work for our office and so on, we do have a lot of employees who are, well, now we do have also quite a couple of employees who are actually born and raised in Berlin, and
Wow.
who but in the very beginning and also a fair share of people are coming from other places like Poland and Italy and Spain and so on. And I think they also come because Berlin is an attractive place to live in.
I When I lived in Regensburg in 2000, actually I think that's 30 years ago, I've always wanted to go to Berlin, but that was like right after the wall, right? But now I
Okay.
really want to go to Berlin.
Yeah, but I think you missed an opportunity because I think Berlin was the most interesting uh, just after the reunification because there was so much freedom and things were not so expensive. Now things are caught up and a lot of the freedom people had. And I mean, it's still an amazing city, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting times just after the wall went down. And so it would
Yeah.
have been
I
great, I
was
think, for you.
19 then, and my
Ah,
parents
yeah, okay.
didn't want me to go. And my host parents, they're like, no, you can't go. We had, we were like in college, my sister and I. So when I visit, Mark, I'll make sure to reach out to you
Yeah,
when I come to
definitely.
Berlin.
I
But
would
I
love
just
to
have
show
a
you.
few more questions, Mark, if you don't mind, because I know
Sure.
we're towards the end of our podcast. Two questions. Number one, what is here in the US, work life balance is really not that people are burnt out here in the US. People work too much, especially architects were not paid well. And what is what is the work life balance culture in Germany? Is it a thing? Like, how do you manage running the business, taking care of the family? Some people are taking care of their aging parents,
Yeah.
their kids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Andreas and I were both fathers to children. Andreas has three boys. I have a boy and a girl, and we do try to run our business in such a way that I do see them grow up, because I think it's a very important time of life. And the kids are incredible, and I think all these outside activities, as I said earlier, and so on, they nurture your own creativity, and so on. If you are well rested, um, uh, happy person, and so on, you are capable of doing incredible work. And that's what we kind of also try to provide the people who work with us. So we tell them um, that we track the hours. So there's a software, it's the same software than the financial software, which they punch in the hours they spend on the project. It helps us to understand whether the project is uh, feasible or not, whether we have to ask for more money at the client and so on. But it also helps us to track if a person is burned out, or if the person has spent too much time on the project and so on. And we try to take measures by telling people you need to now go and rest, or you need to now. We have to talk about the workload. We have to kind of try to kind of spread it out more even, and these kind of things. Um, so that is a very important tool of making sure that there is no late hours, that they happen once in a while. But most of the weekends are not work weekends. They're free. People don't stay very late. And so we kind of try to make sure that healthy minds are working at our office. Um, and then there's some people at our office who have reduced hours to not working 100%, to only work 90% at the office. So they get once in a while a Friday off. So they have a larger weekend. And we tell people, if you are capable of doing the work we want you to do, if you make sure that we deliver or the delivery is on time, and that they are done in the quality we expect things to work, we're happy to kind of reduce hours, and we're kind of happy to be flexible. We do have a model at the office where we provide flexible hours, so people can come very early and then leave earlier, or come in late and then stay a little later, as long as they work or they are here for some core hours where we have meetings and try to talk to consultants and these kind of things. These kind of peoples, and then we're flexible and so on. So we try to provide a large amount of flexibility to our employees, so that they can then structure their private lives around the office and so on. But if someone tells us, look, I need to be in home office because my mom is sick and so on, we actually discussed with one person who then we had to let go due to the financial situation at the office. But at the time, we discussed that she would work remotely from Italy. So she would only come in if there was an important meeting which had to be at the office in presence, and the rest work with her husband, who is from Italy, in Italy and so on, because we wanted to keep the person. Didn't want to lose her. So our office is willing to kind of um, create opportunities to kind of also make the people feel that the work can adapt to their private situations. If they have to take care of a person sick at the family or kids and so on, then we kind of try to find the right answer within the office structure, that it's possible. And because we also want the same freedom and um, possibilities for our own lives, because I think architects should not be the people who are uh, pale and tired. They should be the people who are happy and willing to kind of present their awesome work to the outside world, because it is actually a very interesting job if it's done right. And that's what we try to live in our office as a
D-
office culture.
It's different from your Dubai days, right? Becoming a
Yes,
parent really, becoming a parent really changes your perspective with work. I have two kids.
it does.
Um, they're like 18 and 15. They're older already, so they don't really need me that much. So when I was starting the business, I spent like 50-50. I have 50% being a mom and 50% working. But now that they're older, it
Yeah, you
shifts,
can
right?
shift it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My kids are 3 and 5. So
Oh,
they,
wow.
yeah. Well, my wife luckily also does a lot of children work, which then helps me to work as an architect full time. So she is very supportive in that manner. But on the other hand, she always obviously requests that she also gets my support, and it's something I really also do want to do because they are so adorable kids, and they are this is also what makes it, in my opinion, important to kind of do sustainable architecture, to think about the future, because you want to hand over to the next generation a world which is not in peer shape, but which is fixed and livable and enjoyable and so on. And I think when you have your own kids, you understand why you're doing all this work and so on, because you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for future generations. I think they're the ones to enjoy the shares of your work, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Sounds amazing. It sounds like I need to work for you, Mark,
Yeah, well,
and move to Berlin. um, my last question is, what is your advice for a young architect just graduating, like, and wanting to start their firm? What should they start thinking about or doing? Like if you had to rewind yourself, if go back in time, what did you wish you learned in the past that would make you more, like prepared to run a business? So yeah.
well, I think one of the great advantages I had was that I wasn't very well prepared, because otherwise, I think if you are starting to or prepare yourself too much, you're getting too worried, and then you might not even do the step. I think some of the experience you make in life and so on, they are important to uh, be done sort of blind, without knowing what to expect, because obviously you encounter problems, but you manage, and it's best to kind of manage those problems once they are at hand, and not like worry about them too much. So for me, this is, I think, one of the biggest advice I think I would give people is go for it. It sounds silly because you hear it from a lot of people, but I think it's actually the most important one is follow your dreams. Actually, proceed with what you want to do. Try to focus on what you want. Try to challenge yourself, and don't be too hesitant hearing from other people that it can't be done. Most of the things can be done if you have the right, um, yeah, the right um, momentum to do it, right? And some most biggest thing which helped me to work as an architect is because I enjoy doing it. And if you really enjoy working as an architect, go for it. Start your own firm. Be good in what you're doing. That convinces other people you're the right person, and then the things will come eventually. Like clients will come, success will come, people will appreciate your work, and it's something which is something you can be very grateful of. And then I think it's very important. I once heard a lecture from a famous architect, and she said always, "I have done that, and I have done this, and I designed it like this," and so on. It's no I. I think it's a group process. You're only as good as the team around you. So make sure that you have the right team around you, stick to them, encourage them, and that then will help you through all the problems. So pick the right partners.
Yeah, you have a great team, a great partner, and your wife is, it seems like that's the
I'm
really
lucky.
good formula, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Well,
grateful for what I have. I'm very lucky.
yes,
Um, and that is something I am grateful every day. I really
yes.
am.
So, Mark, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. I wish I
So
could
did
go
I.
on and on because I didn't even get to ask some of the questions. But any parting thoughts, anything? Where can we find you if people wanted to reach out? ask
Um,
questions or,
well,
yeah,
I'm. You can find us, or you can find our contact details on our webpage, and then give us a call, write us a mail. We're always interested in uh, learning or getting to know other people. You can call us up and come to our office. It's an open place. We invite people to look at how we work and so on. If it's not too many, to a certain model. Um, but I think it's very interesting dealing with people from other uh, cultural backgrounds, and this is what makes architecture truly incredible. Is that it's done everywhere, and that you can learn a lot from how it's been done in other countries and in other cultures and so on. And there's so much to learn, and it's a great profession.
So I really enjoyed our conversation, Mark. I feel like I found a friend in Berlin. I will definitely come and visit you.
Yeah, the invitation goes out to you as well. So once you're in Berlin, let me know. I show you
Yes,
the still scary places, so you can catch up on the experience you would have with
that I
19.
missed.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I'm much older now as well, so I don't know if I still know them.
I
With
need to go to
family,
bed by 9.
yeah, with
No, just
family and
kidding.
some things have changed also in
Yeah, yeah,
well, the nightlife experience I
yeah.
have, which is absolutely fine. Yeah, but I'm more than happy to show you around in Berlin. We can do a little tour through our project. I can show you what I
That would be
um,
great.
told about on the podcast. I can show you in live, and yeah, but I know it's a long distance travel, so
Yeah. No, no.
um,
I mean,
let's keep in
one of
touch.
my best friends, Mark in Cleveland, he's a German architect. He's I'm from Cleveland, and he's a German architect from Berlin and London as well. And
Okay.
he owns his company called Evo Domus. They do sustainable housing in Cleveland. So prefab homes. Check them out, Evo Domus, and
I will do.
yeah,
I will do that.
Evo Domus, and he's based in Cleveland. And for me, like other people, when I went to Germany, like in when I was 19, people were like, "What are you doing in Germany?" I really enjoyed the culture and the people and the food and the beer
Yeah. I
and
think
the beer garden.
I, I think what I hear is that Berlin is a bit an exception from the German culture because it's so mixed up.
Yeah,
We're not at Bavaria or Regensburg and so on is what most people consider typical German. Berlin is
yeah, we were
slightly
in
different.
Regensburg in Bavaria.
Yeah, Bavaria. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I enjoy Bavaria. It's nice, and I also do enjoy the food over there and so on. But Berlin is a different experience. It's very
Yeah.
international, and you go to a cafe or a bar, and people only speak English.
Oh,
So it's a very international. Living in London for a long time and so on, London always reminded me on certain areas in Berlin, because it also has this international vibe and is a very creative place and enjoyable. Um, and we, as architects here in Berlin, we try to keep it the way we try to build nice buildings so it still stays enjoyable. That's
yeah.
our approach.
So Mark, vielen Dank. Did that say
Yeah,
that correctly? Or
yeah,
Dankeschön?
you did.
Um, bis später, which
Bis
right? Is
später, yeah.
that bis später? Like till
Yeah, yeah,
later?
yeah, it's correct.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
perfect German. Good pronunciation. Thank you so much for having me. I also really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm looking forward on listening to the podcast
Yes, yes.
myself.
Thanks for your time. I know you're very busy, and all these little things. It was power packed with good information that architects all over the world can learn from. Right? Architects just want to plan and plan, but your suggestion was just do it. No
Do it.
planning, make all the
Yeah,
mistakes. Right? It's
yeah.
great.
You only grow stronger with the mistakes.
Yes. And congratulations, Mark, on all of the accolades and the competitions. I'll
Thank you.
definitely
Thank
follow
you so
you on
much.
LinkedIn and social.
Yeah. All right. Let's
Okay.
stay in touch. I
Cheers.
also enjoyed our chat. All right.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Architect My Business podcast.
If you want more, head over to architectmybusiness.com for more episodes, show notes, and links to everything mentioned in this episode. Don't forget to catch our mini shows, Her Space, Ask Aya, and our main show, Architect My Business. If you enjoyed our episodes and want to hear more, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Your feedback really helps us grow. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye!